So that's us now live. Welcome. This the last of our events from Highland Print Studio. I'm John McNaught. I'm the studio manager. This is Alison McMenemy, who's the director of the studio. We are going to be finishing off our events from Alba to Arabia with Weija Art Centre in Kuwait, where the exhibition has been online on our gallery, and we've had various events, including classes, which we just finished yesterday. So today we're going to finish off by showing a couple of videos with a little bit more in-depth look at two techniques.
الفيديوهات وسوف نتكلم عن تقنيتين هذا اليوم بالنسبة إلى الطباعة.
Kind of relate what you've seen in these videos to what's in the exhibition. Maybe tell some background to the prints that involve these techniques in the exhibition. So Alison will tell you a little bit about the studio.
Yeah, so Highland Print Studio is an open access studio, which means that absolutely anyone can learn to use the space. We do a range of techniques, including etching, screen print, relief printing, and lithography. Yeah. We also have a digital suite, so we have a high quality photographic printing surface, and we have digital software, including Photoshop, Lightroom, and also video editing. So the way the studio works is people pay a membership, and if they have printmaking experience, they can just come and use it. Or we teach people, and the people we teach range from professional artists who are perhaps working at different disciplines like painting and sculpture, who want to introduce printmaking into what they do. Or you could be a complete beginner. We get lots of people who haven't done anything creative since they were at school, which is sometimes quite a while ago, and they want to give it a go, and we teach them to do that. And quite a few of those complete beginners have now been using the studio for years, and some sell their work as well. We also do education and outreach, so we devise projects. John and I come up with ideas for projects, and we like to target groups that perhaps lack confidence in being creative, and that could be through things like disability, or perhaps older people, people who struggle to afford to do what we do, even though our prices are very reasonable, because we receive dirt cheap, as John would say, because we receive government funding, which allows us to subsidise the prices. So it costs about, membership is about £60, 60 odd pounds. So that's 150 dinar. So it's about 150 dinar, and then there's session fees as well. So we're going to show you a couple of films explaining about two of the techniques we do. The first one is etching, and I've done a little sketch piece that shows the various basic techniques that mark making you can do with etching. So we'll share the screen and we'll show you that now. So the technique that I'm going to show you is etching, and that's where we take a metal plate and we etch our image into the plate and take a print off of it.
I'll show you the different ways of mark making. These include line and tone. So for line, we use two different grounds. Soft ground, which gives you a soft pencil-like mark, and hard ground, which gives you a very defined, sharp line. I'll also talk about aquatint, and I've got this little test strip just here, and you can see the different grades of tone. And this relates to the length of time the plate has been put in the acid. So this has been etched in an acid bath, but there's also another way of etching the plate called spit bite, which I'll show you as well. Firstly, we measure the plate to the required size. I'm using a metal scribe to score the plate, and then it's taken over to the guillotine to be cut. Takes about 5 minutes. I'm going to polish the surface of the plate to make it nice and smooth. We use 3 different grades of sandpaper, starting obviously with the coarse. This is the finest grade of sandpaper, and the surface is polished wet. The next stage is filing the edges of the plate. We file and polish the edges so that the ink can be wiped cleanly away from them. I'm burnishing the edges to make sure they're super smooth. The surface of the plate has to be completely clean, so I'm using whiting and ammonia to get rid of any greasy marks. So the plate is now prepared and ready for use, and we can move on to the next stage of the process. I've put the etching plate in our hot plate to warm it up. The soft ground melts onto the plate. The ground is rolled out to coat the plate in a thin layer. It's still a wee bit thin, so I'll put some more on. Job done. A wee walk across the road to get some foliage. I'll use these later. I've covered the plate with tracing paper and started my drawing. The pressure from the pencil transfers the ground from the plate to the paper. This exposes the steel below. Soft ground lifts off the plate easily so things can be pressed into it. Anything with a texture can be used. For example, feathers, fabric, or in this case, leaves. A wee bit of pressure is applied. You can see the grey of the etching plate where the crown has been removed. We don't want the acid to etch the back of the plate, so we have to protect it. So this liquid stop out is painted onto the back. I'm also stopping out the edges. So it's now time to etch the plate. The etching pad contains a weak solution of nitric acid. It will be etched for around 15 to 20 minutes. The ground will eventually start to break down, so you have to keep checking the plate. The plate is washed or dipped in a bath of water to stop it etching. I'm having a wee look to see if the etch is deep enough. I've decided it needs a little bit longer. It looks good now. The ground is washed off with white spirit. So next I'm going to put on a hard ground. The ground is applied in the same way as the previous one, but melts at a much higher temperature. Hard ground can be smoked, and we do this to make the surface darker. The surface of hard ground isn't sticky like soft ground. A metal point is used to draw through the wax. Smoking the plate allows the drawing to be seen better. And the plate is etched again. The longer the plate is in the acid, the thicker the line. I want these lines to be quite delicate, so I'm stopping them out to prevent them etching further. And it's back into the acid. We can repeat this process to get lines of varying depth. And we now have a combination of soft and hard lines. So now I'm going to take a print from the plate to check I'm happy with the marks I've got. The plate is warmed on a hot plate to soften the ink. The ink is applied to the plate and forced into the etched lines. I'm using a ball of scrim to force the ink further into the lines and wipe it off the surface. I finish by using tissue to polish the surface of the plate. The plate goes on the press bed. The paper has been soaking in a bath of water to soften it. I drain and take off the excess. and blot the paper. The paper is then placed on top of the plate. The pressed blankets go on top, and through it goes. And we have a print. So now we can see if we want to do anything else to the plate. So the next technique I'm going to do to the plate is aquatint. The plate is degreased. This is our aquatint box and it's full of powdered resin. I'm hammering it to loosen the resin. The handle is turned to agitate the powder. The handle is locked in place and the paddle acts as a shelf. The powder will settle onto the surface of the etching plate. Don't sneeze. This powder will now be melted onto the surface of the plate. The melted resin gives the plate a dot structure. This is used to introduce tone to the image. So I'm stopping out the areas that I don't want to etch. There are a couple of ways of etching the plate now. The first one I'm going to do is called spit bite. Here a stronger solution of acid is brushed directly onto the plate. As the acid reacts with the plate, it goes weaker and dark. This is blotted off and fresh acid applied. The more the etch, the darker the tone. And I've painted over these areas to prevent them etching further. The plate can also be etched in the bath as before. Etching this way gives flat areas of tone to the plate. The longer the plate is in the bath, the darker the etch. The areas to remain light are stopped out, and the plate goes back in the acid. This process of stop out and etch is repeated until we have all the tones we want. The paper goes into the bath to be soaked. and the plate is inked up as before. The paper is strained. And blotted. Time for my daily workout. So we have a wee print that hopefully shows a nice range of marks. So this is our print of the plate as it is at the moment. You can see the soft ground marks here on the textures of the egg, a little bit of line there, and obviously the leaves. You can also see the hard ground marks as well. The lines are much more defined, sharper, and you can get a deeper edge on those lines. You can see the aqua tints. So here we've got the flat areas of aqua tint, and here on the eggs we've got a little bit of shadow that's a spit bite, and you can see that it gives a much softer edge. It's actually it's an edge that I'm really fond of. I like the kind of diffuse quality of it. So you could decide this is this image completed and this is your final print, or it could be what's just called a proof. So that's the proofing stage, and you would then go back into it, perhaps working it some more, make some corrections. I can see a couple of things I would correct, or alternatively you might think, well, I'm going to do a second plate, and for example I look at this and I think, well, I'd quite like to do a second plate and perhaps do some more spit bite on the leaves and the egg and ink those up in a colour. So there you go, that's etching.
We're speechless. Yeah, so that was an introduction to etching. These talks are part of a project called From Alba to Arabia, which was funded by the British Council. And the project consisted of an exhibition of contemporary Scottish printmaking, which toured venues across the Gulf region. We started in Oman, then went to the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, and Jeddah. And we were just about to go to Kuwait when the pandemic struck. So the British Council suggested that we digitise the project. So that includes putting the exhibition online, which you can see in our website at highlandprintstudio.co.uk. We're now going to show you some examples of etching from that exhibition. Okay, so this is an artist from Winsley who teaches for Highland Print Studio. She teaches our etching and beginner screen printing class. Bronwyn is based in Glasgow, and a lot of her work is about deconstructing architectural features and abstracting them. So this is a two-plate etching, Baker Street. Another one of Bronwyn's, George Street. Bronwyn does a lot of residencies, and some of her prints are all with various countries that she's visited. They're very sumptuous prints, aren't they?
Yeah.
Heavily textured.
I think it's worth pointing out that the sort of the marks that you can see, which maybe more on the previous one, I don't go back, Alison, to the previous one. They're known as, these marks which are all over the plate are known as foul bite, which the bite is the term for the acid eating into the metal. It's a bite. So foul bite is something that technically would be where it breaks through where you don't want it. So in effect, an unwanted bite, and yet it's probably one of the signature marks of etching that highlights it. And Bronwyn celebrates that by allowing, quite a lot of foul bite across the plates. So you could argue it gives them a kind of added atmosphere, I think, as well.
This is another Glasgow-based artist, Murray Robertson. Murray taught me printmaking a long time ago.
Must have been.
It was, and he worked in us. We commissioned artists to work in projects with us. So we commission artwork for touring exhibitions. This was an environmental project called about the peatland, which is a lot of Highland is covered in this particular environment, and it's a really important environment for global climate regulation, but doesn't really get the publicity for that in the way that perhaps the tropical rainforests do. So we commissioned artists to create artwork inspired by this environment. Murray chose to concentrate on these lovely details of the plants you find on the bog, and also the insects. There's a dragonfly in the centre of the image. This is an artist called Ian McNichol. Ian's an etcher. His work used to be quite representational, architectural, and over the years his work has got more and more abstract. And these are basically just a celebration of shape and colour. The inks you use to in etching are oil-based inks, so the colours are incredibly intense and vibrant, and they're just lovely things to print.
I think in these as well, you can contrast the kind of really rich, flat areas of the aquatint, which have carry the colour. So the aquatint you saw in the video of Alison applying, that's these areas he's got the colour, and they contrast with the foul bite again on the kind of background.
And this is another etching in the exhibition. Rachel does a lot of residencies with scientists. This particular image was working with cellular scientists at one of the Glasgow universities. So it's scientists that are researching cell growth. And Rachel had a residency at the university and created images inspired by the scientists' work. And Pamela is an artist who's based in the Highlands. We actually taught her etching. Pamela came to us, she was a professional artist, but her medium was painting, and she received funding to learn printmaking and came to us. She tried all of the techniques, and etching suits her, the images she wanted to create. So Pamela's images are inspired by trees. She looks at the landscape, in particular trees in the landscape, and she looks at them so long that she starts to imagine these figures within them. They're amazingly detailed, and a huge amount of work goes into creating these plates. Pamela will etch these plates using aquatint, and she'll be in and out the acid several times, stopping areas out, proofing the plate, working on the plate. This image, I think, is a cross-section through the trunk of a tree. And this is another one of Pamela's. Amazing, amazing.
And I think that, you know, one of the secrets of how she gets this is really the time. Like Alison said, you saw in the video of Alison going in and out and repeating etches. So Pamela's happy and really enjoys, I think, doing that, and it's just committing the time to it, gets these amazing results. You'll see in the next few slides of her actually printing this image and another one, and you see the plates themselves look lovely. They kind of take on a patina, the steel plates, as they're worked. So we've also included photogravure on polymer plates in this. These aren't etched in the same way as the steel and copper are, but they're inked in exactly the same way. So that's why we've included it. If we move forward, we'll see how these are done. So these are Kasper Kowalski's getting produced. So Kasper's in the exhibition, aerial photographer from Gdynia near Gdansk in Poland. And so he flew across the bog. We'll show you some slides of that shortly. But so we took his images. They're then, you know, taken through the digital processing and printed on transparencies that you can see happening here on a large format printer. These are then photo exposed onto these polymer plates, which are a light sensitive polymer coating on a steel backing plate. And they develop in water. They're amazing. Once the plate is ready and developed properly, then it's inked, like you saw Alison do with the steel plate, in exactly the same way, and produced these remarkable kind of lovely prints of Kasper's. To give you an idea, these are quite big, but 600, I think the size will be on the next slide, but it takes us roughly about 2 hours to ink and print one of these. That's as long as there's no errors in doing it. So there's a suite of 4. He's called this Its Skin. I think you can probably see why. To me, it looks like an elephant or something. There's the size, 69 centimeters. That's the image size by 46, so quite large photogravures. These are taken from about 500 feet up, looking down on the bogland, so it's incredibly wet. I think if you look closely on this, you might be able to see some little tracks, quad bike tracks around this little river that runs through the middle of the bog in Lewis. Lewis is an island off the west coast of Scotland. These are what we'd call lochans, little lochs or lakes anywhere else. The water in the bog is very, the peat makes it incredibly dark, sort of brown. From the air it looks very black, particularly in a monochrome image. And one of the things with the rich oil-based inks in this process is it gives an amazing range of tone, almost this 3D look that you can see, maybe particularly on the left-hand side of this image in the kind of broken bits of bogland. And that's the last one, it's Will. So this is, again, more of a close-up of a larger lochen with floating sphagnum moss floating on the surface of the bogland. So this is how Caspar did it. He couldn't fly because of this fuel tank, so he arranged to have a driver come with his equipment all the way from Poland across Scotland, across the ferry to Lewis, and getting ready to put this kind of scary looking device onto his back. In the middle of this is the Barvis Road, I think, and Lewis. And like some kind of astronaut, or cosmonaut maybe. He heads out onto the moor, which people in Kuwait, this is in some ways the opposite landscape to what you would experience in Kuwait because it's so wet, and yet it's sometimes referred to as a brown desert. And it's only really when you get close into it, there's remarkable colour in it. But also it looks amazing from above, as Caspar found. So you can see there he goes. I think he couldn't fly in wind speeds of more than 12 miles an hour, which is very rare in Lewis. It's very windy, and I think it was the one time you thought that we might lose an artist. I think he had a range of only about 20 miles or something on the fuel tank. So one puff, he'd be away out in the Atlantic and gone. For those of you who don't know, Lewis is on the west side of Scotland, and really your next stop is probably Newfoundland or Labrador and Canada. So it's like the edge of the world, really. Do you want to go through Joanne's?
Yeah, this is a photograph here who worked at Joanne's, an artist based in the Highlands, and we were doing a project with other print studios in Sweden and England, and it was kind of looking at reminiscence. We asked artists to create work about a sense of place, and for Joanne, family and the family heritage is a big thing for her. And she came along with this beautiful little traditional jumper that she wore as a child. And she just knew that Joanne isn't a printmaker. So she came with an idea, and we worked with her and helped her realize her idea in print. So she chose photogravure. She had the photograph of her wearing the jumper. She's just caught a fish, and she had the jumper. So the jumper was photographed, and in Photoshop, the photograph of Joanne was superimposed on it. So this is a single polymer plate. The entire image has got a glaze screen printed on top of it. You can see the image is slightly warmer than the surrounding paper. It's the glaze. And with watercolour paint, Joanne painted the little details on the jumper. So this was exhibited in Sweden and Finland and England. This is another artist we worked with, Liz. Liz is on the right. That's a picture of Joan on the left. And Liz came to us. Liz does large-scale installations using water and ice. She's interested in ice melt and goes on field trips up to the Arctic Circle, up to Greenland, and goes out and takes photographs of the icebergs and the meltwater. And so she came to us with an idea. She said, would you be able to print onto ice? And we rose to the challenge, and John actually got it working really quickly. We went down to Liz's studio, and she had frozen these blocks of ice So screen printing on text works really well, but you have an incredibly narrow window.
Yeah, Liz lives in a converted cinema in Fife, which is amazing. That's where these shots were in our studio. That was hers. This is us back in the print studio. So you can see by this time, if you can see a baker's loaf tin there for baking bread or loaves in, which is what we were freezing the ice in. Could have got a really nice flat surface on the bottom. We had about a 2-minute window to print on it. So these are still trials going on here. You know, there was loads of attempts because Liz was looking for a nice bubble structure in the ice, which was kind of tricky for us to get because it's not really our game. And you can see these trials, watching it melt to see what happens. We ended up, the best freezer I think was Alison's freezer, which Alison lives a couple of doors up from me. So we would then race the ice down into my kitchen and it was printed there. And then we'd photograph the text. It was text we were printing onto it, photographing it as it melts, like you can see here, as well as one of the tests back in the studio. So it was the finished photographs of this, which were.
I love that.
Yeah, this is good. So this shows the ink starting to, as the ice melts, that you would get this. There was obviously, I mean, the inks are water-based, but there's obviously some chemical in them that just gently accelerated the ice melt. So they would almost end up embossed letters into the ice, and then they would kind of bleed out as it sort of poured out of that, almost like tree growth or something. So these are the finished prints. So we would take the photos of that you saw the last time, and then they were then produced as photogravures. So they've been inverted. So we decided to invert them to negatives. So the text, instead of being black, is now white. And you can see the sequence as it goes through. They're bigger also. Again, these are 67 centimeters, so they're bigger than they were in reality. And it kind of just brought out the textures and stuff with that ice melt as it went through. So obviously ice melt is a big thing now with global warming and so on. So like Alison said, Liz has done quite a bit. This was a project called Below Another Sky that involved the other 4 Scottish print studios working with artists from Commonwealth countries and Scottish artists going. Then for people in Kuwait, Commonwealth, I mean, I'm not sure that we really know what the Commonwealth is. It's kind of, I think it might be like a sort of trauma group for ex-British colonies or something. They get to play games together and we send artists to them and so on. So I think that's all the kind of etching or intaglio inked. Intaglio is the name for the ink process in etching, and I think that's all of them that are in the exhibition.
So I said we were about to go out to Kuwait just before the pandemic struck. The exhibition should have been physically in Weija Art Centre in Kuwait City, and we were incredibly disappointed not to get out there. So the exhibition would have been there, and John and I would have been out doing these presentations and workshops.
Yeah.
So Weija were up for doing a digital version of this, and they very kindly agreed to host it. So John has been teaching online classes with groups in Weija. We finished that just yesterday.
Yeah, it's good. First time we've done it, so it was
really
good fun.
So it's been a real pleasure to collaborate with Weija, sadly remotely.
So we move on now. I mean, not one film about printmaking, but 2. It's like kind of bonanza day. What could be better than this? 2 films about printmaking. Probably quite a lot. But anyway, this, if you could, within the studio, the techniques Alison explained earlier on, if you could think of the one that was most in contrast to etching, I think it probably would be screen. It's, as you'll see in the film, it uses a different ink system altogether. It doesn't have reversal and so on. So rather than me blabbing on about it, I'll let the film do the talking. So again, when screen share, hopefully this one will be good to go. These are the ingredients of a screen print. And in this film, we'll take you through how we might go about producing a screen print here at Highland Print Studio. We're going to try and use as much materials as possible. I thought we'd start with this wee guy, which is a Polaroid camera. So we're going to start with an analog film source, and then as you'll see, we'll take it through digital, and then we'll move from there. So we're ready to go with the model positioned, and we're going to use natural light and a portrait black and white Polaroid film, which you can see now doing its magic and developing, and then we're going to move upstairs to the digital area. So now I'm opening the film scanner, placing the Polaroid on, so we're now going to go from analog photography into digital. And we'll get as nice and as rich a file as possible from the scanning software. So we're switching now onto the printing computer, and this is all about developing the image as best we can to print a transparency for screen printing. Now, one of the key things is for screen print, it loves a dot structure, so we'll be putting a halftone onto the image. You can see that happening now. So here at the studio, we print our transparencies in a large format printer. It gives very high quality positives or transparencies with very nice rich blacks, which will block the light during the exposure processes to come. So the printer churns away, and then once it's done, we have our finished artwork, which you can see has been sized up quite a bit for the screen print. So now down back in the screen printing room, we're trimming and preparing the image, and it's going to form the source and the basis for some hand-drawn work that we'll do next. For the drawn work, we'll be working on drafting film, which is transparent, and using drawing materials which will be opaque to block the light. This red liquid is called photopaque. It's kind of like a very opaque poster paint. So the colour, the red colour, is irrelevant. It's really just creating a stencil which will block light. You can see that I have the photo image, the first transparency underneath, and I'm working on top. I've now switched to this black liquid, which is a special Highland Print Studio mix containing black pigment ink. And when this dries, it creates lovely sort of textures which should show up on the print. Now, when this first one is completed, we'll move on and start the next one. Again, this is positioned on top of the photo image, which will be our constant. And this time we're going to be using heavy black crayons and charcoal, which again should block the light and give different sort of marks from the first one. These transparent sheets are sometimes called transparencies, other times called separations, because each of them is going to create a colour which will be printed, so therefore we're separating out the colours in preparation for printing. So once again, we've completed the second one, and now we'll get the final one positioned and ready to go. Now, to give a variety of textures and mark making, I'm going to use black ink, drawing ink, with a nib pen. This will give lovely sort of sharp, very opaque marks. Remember that the drawing material itself